But I have to say, this year's winner, the first place winner, had a significant margin in his lead. Not surprising, in that he has been a multi-Rebbe Award winner. You probably know who I'm talking about, and he's our guest for our feature interview today. I'm talking about Avi Yemini, our chief Australian correspondent, who joins us now from Melbourne. Avi, great to see you again.
How you doing, Ezra? Thanks for having me.
Well, it's a pleasure. Now, some of the Canadians say, well, hey, everyone in Australia is voting for Avi. He has a whole country to himself, whereas the Canadians, there's half a dozen Canadians dividing up the Canadian vote. But I happen to know for a fact that you have fans around the world, not just in Australia, but in the UK, Canada, and America. And even in Israel, for example, you just came back from a couple of weeks doing journalism at the border between southern Israel and Gaza. So I think the excuse from Canadians, oh, he has the whole country, Australia, rooting for him, I think that might be a tiny bit of sour grapes, but it's all good sport. I think everyone here is rooting for you, and you've done some great journalism in 2023.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Look, I don't blame him. It's maybe it is. Maybe I do have that leg up.
No, I'm just.
But I reckon I deserve it, because we also, on the flip side of it, we operate the whole Rebel here on a much smaller team. Either way, that some of the guys that I was up against that I actually got to meet this year, just weeks before the war broke out in Israel on that amazing tour that we did. These are real contenders, and these are people that I've looked up to even before I worked at Rebel. So I'm humbled by however I won, for everybody that voted for me.
Well, listen, we're just joking around, and we love your work. During the lockdowns, it was a real window on Australia, and that's where I think you really started to build an enormous international following, because, of course, Australians wanted to hear what was happening in their own country, and you and Rukshan Fernando, another citizen journalist, it was basically the two of you covering the harshest lockdown in Australia by a politician who was soon nicknamed Dictator Dan. But that story, your reports were viewed around the world because people couldn't believe it was happening in Australia, a country that everyone around the world thought was pretty easygoing and pretty friendly and pretty positive. I want to look back, not since all your work since the pandemic, but I want to just take a minute to talk about 2023, because it was an amazing year, starting in January 2023, where you and I and a handful of other journalists actually went to the World Economic Forum together. Now, you had been before. It was my first trip. It was brutally cold. We were trudging around this ski town in the Swiss Alps called Davos. But it really was exhilarating, because you were playing cat and mouse with these VVIPs, not just VIPs, but very, very important people who didn't have entourages. I mean, maybe they had one assistant next to them. They didn't have like a swarm of bodyguards. Tell me a little bit about your experience in Davos, because we're headed back there in just a few weeks. Set the scene, and then I'll throw to what I think is one of my career highlights of my life, is when you and I had a joint scrum, a walking scrum of Albert Bourla, the CEO of Pfizer. But set the table for our viewers. I think most of our viewers have seen it, but I just want to talk a bit about Davos. You've been a couple times. This will be your third journey. How would you describe going to that World Economic Forum as an outsider, as a citizen journalist on the outside?
Yeah, look, firstly, I think that it's just the perfect way to start the year in journalism, especially for Rebels, because you get to come face to face with some of the most, agenda setting, powerful people, unelected, usually unelected, powerful people on the planet. And as you say, they don't have the entourages. It's their safe space. I was a bit surprised last year when we went, Ezra, that we even got anything, because I thought surely after the first time we'd traveled to Davos that they would change their security protocols and that. And the only change that we learned that they implemented was that they'd encouraged guests to, if you remember that, they wear their name tags that are all color coded, because it's kind of a class system to show who's important and who's just staff and who's service. So they were telling people to, on the official invitations or when you got your passes, to just cover them up when you leave the closed area and come out to where the rest of us peasants are on the main strip, on the street where they want to hang out. But that was the only change they made. The thing that they obviously didn't, keep in mind, think about when they asked people to do that, is that these people are so superficial, and everybody that is, anyone important, they want people to know who they are. They want people to know how important they are. So nobody abided by that. And I personally saw the instruction that they were giving the guests to do. So I'm excited to go back again. I don't know what to expect this time, and obviously the news cycle is different, and some of the old issues are still there, but we've got new issues this year. I question whether there's going to be a Ukraine tent or pop up there this time. The last two times there were, and they were kind of the centerpieces of these of the WEF. But it seems like the world is starting to forget Ukraine. So I don't know. I'm looking forward, though, to kicking off 2024 in what I believe is going to become our rebel tradition. Well, it certainly seems to have started.
Yeah. Well, there was a few key moments for me. Again, it was my first time last year. And I remember when the police pulled us over, and I'm used to the police giving us a bit of a hassle. And I know you are too. You've actually been arrested several times. We had to sue the police to get them to back off you. So you and I mean, you more than me, are used to police being a little bit rough with the civil liberties. But it's my observation, based on two interactions I had there, that Swiss police are actually very gentle, have a very light touch. You and I mean, the way we scrummed Albert Bourla, if we were scrumming Dictator Dan in Melbourne or scrumming Justin Trudeau like that in Canada, the bodyguards would be there smashing us. The Swiss police did not get involved. As long as we didn't touch the guy or threaten the guy, they absolutely had no interest in getting involved in our journalism. And when they pulled us over in our car once, I remember saying to the cop, freedom of the press. And they said, "You're right. Keep on moving." I actually had a deeper respect for Switzerland and their commitment to civil liberties. I have to say, Avi, I found it superior than either Australia or Canada, and that's what makes me sad as a Canadian.
Yeah, it was interesting because at first, when even the Swiss police, when they, walk up to you or stop you in the car and tell you can't film, as soon as you push back, what I've been used to in Australia or in other parts of the world when I've generally gone to report, is as soon as you question their authority, they step up, even if they're wrong, and they often are. But they'll come up and they kind of go on this power trip, whereas the Swiss police were the exact opposite. As soon as you question the legality around them telling you to turn off the cameras or filming or whatever, they went more to an emotional position. They go, "Yeah, it's your right, but we don't really want to be on camera," which makes me think, all right, well, if you're not unlawfully telling me I have to stop, I will, as a human, be more compliant if there is no real journalistic reason for my cameras to be rolling. Often we roll our cameras through these, checkpoints or any interaction with police just in case they cross a line. And I did grow to respect the Swiss police just like you. And I witnessed your interactions with them this time, and we were prepared. If you remember, as we do often, is we had a lawyer ready to go to help us out if something happened, if they did cross those lines, but they absolutely didn't.
Yeah. Well, here, let's roll the whole interaction of you and me and two of our cameramen. Like, the timing was perfect. We went there, I think, I'm trying to remember how many folks we had, but you and I were there with our microphones. We had two cameramen, and it was just, it was like we were waiting. We didn't know who we were waiting for, but when he showed up, let's roll the walking scrum that you and I had with Albert Bourla. People still stop me on the street. Well, they don't stop me. When I'm talking to them and say, "Hey, you're the Bourla guy." I'm not sure if you get that too. Here, let's take a look at that video. Mr. Bourla, can I ask you, when did you know that the vaccines didn't stop transmission? How long did you know that without saying it publicly?
Thank you very much.
I'm sorry. Answer that question. I mean, we now know that the vaccines didn't stop transmission, but why did you keep it secret? You said it was 100% effective, then 90%, then 80%, then 70%. But we now know that the vaccines do not stop transmission. Why did you keep that secret?
Have a nice day.
I won't have a nice day until I know the answer. Why did you keep it a secret that your vaccine did not stop transmission?
Is it time to apologise to the world, sir? To give refunds back to the countries that poured all their money into your vaccine that doesn't work, your ineffective vaccine?
Yeah, you have a little bit around.
Are you not ashamed of what you've done in the last couple of years?
Do you have any apologies to the public, sir?
Are you proud of it? You've made millions on the backs of people's entire livelihoods. How does that feel to walk the streets as a millionaire on the backs of the regular person at home in Australia, in England, in Canada?
What do you think about on your yacht, sir? What do you think about on your private jet? Are you worried about product liability? Are you worried about myocarditis?
What about the sudden deaths?
What do you have to say about young men dropping dead of heart attacks every day? Why won't you answer these basic questions? No apologies, sir.
Do you think you should be charged criminally for some of the criminal behaviour you've obviously been a part of?
How much money have you personally made off the vaccine?
How many boosters do you think it'll take for you to be happy enough with your earnings? Nothing?
Who did you meet with here in secret? Will you disclose who you met with? Who did you pay commissions to? In the past, Pfizer has paid $2.3 billion in fines for deceptive marketing. Have you engaged in that same conduct again? Are you under investigation like you were before for your deceptive marketing, sir?
If any other product in the world doesn't work as promised, you get a refund. Should you not refund to countries that laid out billions for your ineffective vaccine?
Are you used to only sympathetic media, so you don't know how to answer any questions?
Is that it? Shame on you, sir.
Shame on you. You know, the thing is, Avi, and I've said this, I've thought about this 100 times since that video, which, by the way, on Twitter alone, I think has 40 million views, if my math is right.